Hey everyone, and welcome back to Battleborn. I've got a new build for you today. This one is for Kelvin, and I call it Biting Chill. With this build, you have super high survivability, super high mobility, and you've got a lot of crowd control. So you can zoom around the map at crazy speeds, stunning everything in your path, and he's got a decent amount of damage that he can dish out as well. And using this build, you basically can't die unless you make a mistake or you overextend, which almost isn't a thing for him because he can just run in at the enemy, and if he gets in trouble, just sublimate out of there. The only way they're going to stop you is to hit you with a stun or just dump a crazy amount of damage on you from a coordinated attack. Other than that, you're not going to die. And even in situations that are bad for Kelvin, like all range characters, he can still live as long as you're being cautious, even if you don't have a healer. So that's exactly what happened on the match I'm including with this build. So if you want to check that match out, it's down in the description. And that's the exact setup I had there. No healer on my team and all range on the other team. They were just lighting me up anytime I showed my face, but they couldn't get me. I was too slippery. Alright, so let's show you how I set this up. So the nice thing about Kelvin is he's got a lot of interesting ways he can be built. A lot of characters, they kind of only have one or two sort of setups that work for them, but Kelvin's got a bunch that can work. However, I only found one that worked really well for just random groups. So playing by myself and jumping into a queue. This is the only way I got him to work consistently. So I'm going to show you how I build that, but I'll go over the other options a little bit as well. All right, so for level 1, I go to the left and I get the Big Chill to increase his health regeneration. If you've got a healer, I would probably go up the middle with density for more max health, or if you want to build him completely differently, you could go to the right with Cold Clock, and if you do his smash ability, it's 2 hits per smash, so every 2 smashes you're going to be slowing everything he hits. But for this build, we go to the left with the Big Chill. Alright, so for level 2, I go with Quick Bite. That's going to increase my movement speed every time I use Chomp and actually damage an enemy with it. I like that for just making sure things don't get away from me. It's really helpful in that situation. You could go with Diffusion if you want your Chomps to do more damage. Strong Wind, I don't know why you'd pick that, but that's an option as well. But I go to the left with Quick Bite. Alright, so level 3, we're going to the left again with Swelling Wind. That's going to make your Sublimate just go a little bit faster, and with the Helix we pick later, go ridiculously fast. But for right now, it's just going to be a small increase to your movement speed when you sublimate. So you can extend a little bit farther into the enemy team, and if you need to get out, you can travel farther safely with your sublimate. However, there is some interesting builds that are being made with Ice Maker on the right. You lose your stun in replace of a slow, and they make that build around extra damage from your chomps when enemies are slowed. So that's another option you could go with. I tried that build out. It didn't work out well for me solo. So for this build, we're going to the left with Swelling Wind. Level 4, we're going to the left again with Mastication Restoration. Now chomp damage is going to give us 23% lifesteal off of it. Some people seem to like Shield Snacker for some reason. I don't know why, because Kelvin's shields deteriorate. So I find the lifesteal more interesting. And then if you wanted to go with that build I was talking about earlier, Slow Food will do increased damage against slowed targets, which you would hit with your Sublimate. But for this build, going to the left, Mastication Restoration. Alright, level 5, we're going to the left again with Ice 6. And that's going to increase the shield strength we gain from our permafrost from using our abilities. I don't really find Blue Ice to be all that useful because his shields get used up really quickly. So I want bigger shields even though they still deteriorate. It's definitely helpful. All right, level 6, we are going with Wind Chill on the left. Now, this is the one that pairs up with the earlier Helix we picked for increasing movement speed while you're sublimated. Every major enemy you hit is going to increase your sublimation time, and then the longer you're in sublimate, you go faster. So with those two together, you can zoom across an entire map. It's as long as you're hitting major enemies. It's insane. So those two together work as an amazing escape or being aggressive, however you want to use sublimate. All right, so for level 7, all of these are interesting. So I go to the left with Groupthink because I fall back a lot to my allies and then I'm just chilling there with my health regen. If you're in a match where you're getting a lot of kills and assists, you could go with Ice Heart to get 450 health every time one of those enemies, every time you get an assist or a kill on one of those enemies. Or you could go with Icy Force on the right to increase the pushback of your pound. All of them are interesting choices, but like I said, for this build, I go to the left with Groupthink. Alright, so for level 8, we're going to the right with Windy Season. We're going to decrease that sublimate cooldown, use it more often. I don't see any reason to use Hibernation on the left. Alright, level 9, I go with Sawtooth on the right. That's going to make our Chomps do a ton of damage. Because Chomp is based off of maximum health, and that's going to double the amount of maximum health it's generating its damage off of. But Overeater on the left is an interesting choice as well, just because you'll be able to chomp more often, which means you're going to get more permafrost shields. So however you want to build him, but for this build, we go to the right with Sawtooth. And then level 10, definitely Absolute Zero on the right, add a slow to our Ice Wall. The left and middle choices might be interesting if the wall was more consistent on its placement, but since it's not, Absolute Zero is the obvious choice, because if the wall goes in a stupid place, it's still going to have that slow effect, so that's super helpful. Alright, so I've shown you the Helix options, or the Helix choices, I mean, and let's jump over to the gear. So as with my last build, I have 2 sets of gear that I run. One for Incursion and Meltdown, which is expensive, and a cheap set for Capture. So let's go through the expensive set first. So the first item up is this Survivor's Regrowth Serum. It's going to add 7 health regen per second, and then it's going to add another 4.2 health regen per second after I survive for 3 minutes. And like I said earlier, I'm not going to die on this character, on this build, unless I'm doing something stupid or the other team is coordinating attacks against me. Otherwise, I'm just going to live the entire match. So I'm gonna have that 4.2 health regen addition the entire game unless I make a mistake. Alright, second item I go with is this Rejuvenating Ikuni Scale Mail. It's gonna reduce damage on me, which is great because I'm a huge target and everyone's gonna light me up, and it's gonna give me some more health regen. So obviously I'm making a health regen build. And then the last item I go with is the Boots of the Brute. Increase my movement speed, very helpful. Increase my attack speed, also very nice. But more importantly, slow enemies with my melee attacks every 3 seconds. This item is invaluable, and it's really the only way I've found to keep enemies from getting away from me on Kelvin. Alright, so that's the expensive set. Oh, and sorry, this item comes from the Saboteur mission. So you'll need to kill Foreman Thrall on the Saboteur to pick up these Boots of the Brute. Alright, and let's see. There's my cheap set. So the first item I go with may be confusing to some of you. It's an Erratic Internal Capacitor, and it increases my shield strength by 140, reduces my reload speed, which doesn't apply to Kelvin, and it costs 0 to activate. So why would I want more shield strength? 2 reasons. Kelvin actually has a shield, and it's just in degenerative form, if that makes any sense. So what's happening is that his shield is in constant degeneration, which is why your permafrost goes down. Well, actually, permafrost goes down regardless, but Kelvin has a shield, it's 300 max shield, and it's constantly degenerating, and that's why you don't have it. But his permafrost shields are based off of his maximum shield strength, so increasing that maximum shield strength increases your permafrost shields, and because of this third item I take, I'm increasing my shield recharge per second. That's actually going to move his shield into a positive. So now he'll have a shield. And it's going to be a 440 strength shield because of this item. It regenerates super slow, but it's a 440 point shield that he otherwise wouldn't have. Plus, he'll still get his permafrost shields. And they'll be stronger because of the increased shield strength. So that's what's going on here. Took some people on the forums to open my eyes to the fact that Kelvin actually has a shield, and that's how you get it to work, is getting that plus to shield recharge per second. And then this third item I go with is going to decrease my cooldown times and add recoil. Recoil doesn't matter, so decrease cooldown times by 7% and 0 activation cost on that one. So there you go, there's the cheap gear, the expensive gear, and the Helix choices. So now, let's jump to some clips and I'll explain to you how to play this build. And normally I show a variety of clips from different matches, but for the last 3 or 4 days, it's all been Incursion on Overgrowth. I cannot get another map, so every single clip is on Overgrowth. So sorry about that, not much I can do. But yeah, anyway, let's jump in and I'll explain to you how to play this build. So Kelvin is a pretty straightforward character, and he essentially works the same way throughout the entire match. He just gets better at what he does. Chomp is your biggest damage ability, and it's on a short cooldown, so use it often, and whenever possible, use it to either one-shot the tiny minions or finish enemies off using Chomp to increase your max health. By the end of a typical game, you should have around 3,500 HP or more if you were doing a good job using your Chomp. Also, keep in mind that Chomp gives a permafrost shield on use, just like all of Kelvin's abilities. So if you're running away, use it to soak up some damage. So your sublimate is used to stun people, escape, or chase people down. Your secondary attack is a ground pound, which does minor AoE damage. And your regular attack is just a single target attack. Early game, you should be most concerned with raising your max HP with Chomp, getting shards, and leveling up. I mostly ignore the other players if at all possible until later levels. At level 3, you're going to pick up Swelling Wind from your Helix, which is going to increase the distance you travel with Sublimate and let you extend further into enemy territory and still be able to escape to safety. Plus, by now, you should have your first regen gear activated or close to it, which will increase your survivability quite a bit. I still wouldn't concern yourself with the enemy players too much at this point. Your top priorities should still be raising your max HP and leveling up, but that's obviously not always possible without getting into the line of fire and taking a serious beating. What I usually do is engage a minion wave with a Chomp, ground pound until Chomp is off cooldown, then Chomp another and sublimate out of there. If my health is too low, then it's back to the base for me. I know it's not the most exciting thing to do, but Kelvin needs those stacks if he's going to be awesome later in the match. So you might need to spend some time traveling back to base multiple times at the beginning of the match and maybe even later in the match, but he's going to get stronger and stronger as you go, and eventually you're not going to need to do that. And plus, if you have healers with you, then you shouldn't really need to worry about that at all. Miko or Alani or Ambra, any of those can give you enough health so you can jump back into the action right away each time you engage. At level 5, you get increased survivability due to the increase to permafrost shields from the Helix, and you pick up your ultimate. I love this ultimate when it actually works right. You can use it to set up a barrier at a choke point and trap enemies on your side of the battle, which in most cases is going to be a death sentence for them. It doesn't have to be a choke point though. If you place it at an enemy's feet, it'll stun them. And if it stuns them on your side of the wall, you can then run in and body block them against the wall. And that's going to make it super hard for them to get away. Plus, most players backpedal away from you, so they'll just keep backpedaling against your wall and not realize what's happening, and they'll essentially just stand there for you until you wail on them until they're dead. Obviously, the good players are going to quickly figure it out and run forward and around or do something else, but a lot of players will just stand there for you. It's pretty amazing. So the ultimate, unfortunately, can ruin just as many kills as it sets up, because there's an issue when you place it. So if you try to place the wall in a position that it doesn't like for whatever reason, then it's going to place the wall closer to you, and that's almost always going to mean that you're going to separate yourself from the person you were trying to trap. And then they just get away to safety. The other problem with the wall is that it doesn't appear instantaneously. And that small delay can mean the enemy passes over it before it appears, and now they're on the safe side and you can't follow. So my best advice that I can give with using the ultimate is just to learn the places on the map where it works more often than not. So for instance, if you're playing on Overgrowth, you need to be really careful when trying to place the wall on Sniper Nest, because it hardly ever works. It always puts the wall someplace you didn't want it. At level 9, your damage goes up pretty dramatically by increasing Chomp's damage. On top of this, by now you should most certainly have your Boots of the Brute activated, so any melee at all is going to slow your target. And your HP should be well over 3,000 with lots of regen and strong permafrost shields, so you're not easy to take down. You can charge into enemy territory, smack some people around, and maybe even pick up a kill, and then sublimate out to safety at insane speeds, and of course stunning everyone on your way out. I've gone from enemy sentry to my sentry on one sublimate numerous times, and the whole trip probably takes 3 seconds at most. It's by far the best mobility move in the game, and it's just awesome. On top of being really cool to just barge into the other team, it's usually smart play too, because often my teammates will follow in behind me and pick up some kills if I can't get them myself. Like I said earlier, without a stun on you and some coordinated heavy damage, the other team is going to have no way to take you down. You just zoom out of reach every time you find yourself in trouble, and they have no way to stop you. With experience too, you'll get a feel for what characters to avoid pressing too hard against, and when it's a good time to bail out early because they're preparing that stun to take you down. As a general rule though, Galilea and Galt should be dealt with cautiously, as both can pull you out of sublimate and deal crazy damage to you themselves. Well, there you have it folks, the Biting Chill build for Kelvin. He's a tough character to get used to, but he's super fun once you get the hang of him. I hope you like the build, and be sure to let me know how it works out for you in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.